Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about radioactive waste and sea level rise.
When we talk about climate change, one of the first things that comes to mind is sea level rise. Sea level rise is a direct consequence of climate change. The warming of the Earth due to an increased greenhouse effect is causing the polar caps to melt, therefore increasing the amount of water in the oceans and causing the sea level to rise. This is a real threat, especially for coastal regions. The Netherlands is a country that is mainly below sea level, so a potential rise in sea level could have fatal consequences. Nowadays, the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute predicts scenarios where sea level will have risen 25 to 80 centimeters in 2085 and 100 to 300 centimeters in 2100. The main risk that is being considered in this country is floods. A rise in the sea level can increase the vulnerability to floods of coastal and urban areas. This can have major economic impacts, as floods can provoke infrastructure damage, such as dike breaches that need to be repaired. Moreover, floods can cause a loss of the sediment, like sand, that must be replenished in order to protect the existing coastline. This is referred to as beach nourishment and has a high economic cost. Commenting the rising sea level has been on the Dutch political agenda for quite some years already. However, with new technologies being developed, new challenges are also presented to governments on how to deal with sea level rise. The majority of nuclear waste produced in Holland is managed by the Central Organization for Radioactive Waste, which has decided to construct an engineered surface storage facility with sufficient capacity for all the nuclear waste generated in a period of at least 100 years. However, limited by the current inventory, a large part of the waste will still be radioactive after 100 years of storage. In other words, the storage of radioactive waste at COVRA, which is the abbreviation of the organization, is not a final long-term solution. Therefore, further research from COVRA indicated that regarding the present state of science and technology, storage of this long-lived waste in stable geological layers in the deep underground is the only solution to ensure that the radioactive waste will still remain out of the human living environment after thousands of years. This is referred to as deep geological disposal. In addition, other prospective nuclear waste disposal methods were proposed as solutions for long-term disposal, which are referred to as reprocessing and transmutation. Reprocessing, as the name implies, involves taking waste and separating the useful components from those that aren't as useful. To be more specific, this involves taking the fissionable material out from the irradiated nuclear fuel. Transmutation involves converting a chemical element into another less harmful one. Even though there are various methods for the disposal of nuclear waste, a combination of factors such as volume, half-life and financing must be taken into account when assessing any particular method. Besides, the follow-up research is very important for the understanding of conceptual knowledge, hence the future implementation of the nuclear waste disposal. Since nuclear power plants require huge amounts of water to prevent the nuclear fuel from overheating, over 40% of the world's nuclear plants are built along coasts, with that number rising to 66% for just plants under construction. It is reported that storm surges and extreme weather events can pose remarkable risks to both operational and decommissioned plants, almost all of which in the US will continue to store nuclear waste on site for decades until a permanent storage solution is found. Together with increasing rising sea levels, these risks will continue to accumulate.
Accident of nuclear power plants and radioactive waste disposal caused by the rising sea level can result in irreversible health and environmental consequences, on top of social and economic damages, including, worst of all, the release of radiation that can remain lethal for thousands of years. Moreover, according to a report by the Environmental Agency, rising sea level caused by global warming could destroy the UK's only major nuclear waste dump in little as 500 years. After seeing the effects of rising sea level and the multiple radioactive waste disposal techniques, we could ask ourselves, how do these two exactly relate to each other? Could a rising sea level be dangerous for radioactive waste storage? Let's first consider the consequences of sea level rise on the soil. Due to sea level rising, coastal areas are becoming more threatened. Beside coastal areas, more inland areas can also feel the pressure of rising sea level. Rising sea level can cause destructive erosion, wetland flooding, and contaminate soil and groundwater with salt. Higher sea levels are also coinciding with more dangerous and powerful hurricanes and typhoons that move more slowly and drop more rain. The prospect of higher coastal water levels threatens basic services such as internet access, since much of the underlying communications infrastructure lies in the path of rising seas. Due to rising sea level, the soil starts to become more saline. The higher the sea level, the further the salt will contaminate the soil. Most vegetation isn't able to grow on salty grounds, which will lead to a loss of vegetation and biodiversity. Without vegetation, the soil is very vulnerable to ground erosion. This erosion can take place by wind or water. All the eroded ground will end up in rivers eventually. In the Netherlands, most rivers are diked, so they won't flood. Due to these dikes, once the sediment is in the river, it will go to the sea and won't settle somewhere alongside the rivers. Moreover, due to the declining height of the Netherlands, the sediment will end up into the sea where it will reduce the capacity of that reservoir. Because the sediment takes over the place of the water, the sea level rises even more. This is an ongoing loop. The search for the right spot to store all the Dutch radioactive waste is still going on. The goal is that in 2130, the actual storing has begun in one of the layers. The perfect spot must have the right geology, a high level of security, and must be compatible with other national programs in different countries. At the moment, there are two options in consideration: clay and rock salt. Undisturbed rock salt is very impermeable. Because of that, rock salt will slowly surround other materials, forming a tight geological barrier around the waste. Another positive thing is that there are hundreds of years of experience in rock salt mining. The permeability in clay is very low. This results in slow water movement. Because of that, clay is self-sealing, so fractures that occur will close rapidly. It is also a very stable layer. It has remained unchanged the past million years. The combination of these qualities makes clay a good host rock. The previous scenarios showed that a sea level rise and its consequences on the safety of radioactive waste storage are potentially worrying. But what is currently being done to prevent floods in the Netherlands? The organization that is mainly responsible for this is Rijkswaterstaat, a governmental organization that maintains the most important infrastructures, including the water infrastructure. The measures they take can be roughly divided into natural and human solutions. Natural measures include, for example, giving rivers more space to overflow if necessary, and spreading sand by wind over our coastline to widen the beach. Human measures are, for example, more artificial measures such as building the delta works and operating storm surge barriers. It is evident that a global rise in the sea level poses a threat to this low-lying country. The possibility of a flood is a very feasible one, and we must consider the option of our nuclear waste storage being flooded. In that case, the flood water could carry the radiation miles inland, contaminating big stretches of land and causing long-term damage to both people and the environment. So, what is currently being done to prevent this? Dutch nuclear waste is now currently being stored in a facility located in the province of Zeeland. Since these facilities only have planned lifespan of 200 years, and the fact that its location is near the sea, is quite risky. The waste is only stored here temporarily. As November of 2020, the Central Body for Nuclear Waste, or COVRA in Dutch, is carrying out research into the storage of waste deep below the soil surface. This is the only method to safely store nuclear waste for the long term, according to the current scientific consensus. Policymakers will make a definitive decision on the storage of nuclear waste in the year 2100. In the meantime, one of the key objectives of COVRA is to foster acceptance and confidence among the general public for this type of disposal. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed our video, and if you have any further questions, do not hesitate to contact any of us.